Hey guys, how we doing? So we're back with another Mother's Basement video, and it's been a while since we've done a What's in an OP. I want to check out the Mob Psycho Season 2 one, but Evangelion is all the rage at the moment. Everyone's talking about it. Giguk did a video about it, because it's out on Netflix. They've done the redub, blah blah blah, and I feel like he's chosen the perfect time to do a What's in an OP for the Evangelion opening. So, let's check it out and see what Mother's Basement has to say about it.
A Cruel Angel's Thesis, the intro to Neon Genesis Evangelion, is one of the most iconic anime openings in existence.
Yep.
It's been parodied and remade dozens of times, and it's almost unheard of to see a best anime openings list that doesn't include it somewhere, usually toward the top. As such, it's kind of been the elephant in the room for as long as I've been running this channel. From basically the moment I decided to make a series out of analyzing anime openings, I knew I'd have to talk about it one day, and I've gotten plenty of requests to do so.
I imagine so.
But knowing how important this series is and how important its OP is, I wanted to wait for the right time, be it a huge subscriber milestone or some other significant event to do this, to ensure that it wouldn't be just another weekly offering to appease the almighty algorithm. And with Evangelion having finally returned to North America, courtesy of Netflix, after languishing for over a decade in licensing hell, that time is now.
How do I watch
with an anime this old and celebrated with this obsessive a fan base, there's a good chance that everything I say here has been said elsewhere. But as a series, I feel like What's in an OP would never really be complete if I didn't take a stab at interpreting this opening from my own perspective and in my own words. As the point of this series is to analyze foreshadowing and symbolism in anime openings, this video will contain spoilers for Neon Genesis Evangelion. Heavy ones. So if you haven't seen it yet, go do that. And no matter what anyone tells you, don't skip the last two episodes. They're just as important to understanding the series as End of Evangelion, even if they are very different from what you might expect. Now, on with the analysis. As is the case with Evangelion itself, there are many layers of meaning to A Cruel Angel's Thesis, insights into Shinji and other characters' psyches, subtle and not so subtle allusions to the events of the series. There's a lot to unpack here. But before we dig down through all those layers, it's worth taking a second to understand it at a surface level. An opening theme is, after all, an advertisement above all else. In a broadcast television environment, it is meant to grab your attention as you're surfing through channels and get you interested enough to watch the show that follows it. It's an anime's first chance to leave an impact on potential viewers, and that first impact has to be strong.
The first impact. Get it?
What is this opening saying to someone who's watching Eva for the first time? More specifically, what was it saying to someone looking for anime to watch on late-night Japanese television in 1995? To understand that, one needs to understand the context in which Evangelion was made. The first half of the 90s marked a period of stagnation for mecha anime. Through the success of Gundam, Sunrise had essentially cornered the market on the genre, and they were leveraging that, along with Gundam's remarkably effective marketing formula, to make boatloads of money on toy sales, both on Gundam spin-offs and other mecha shows. Buoyed by those funds, the Sunrise mecha anime of this time featured stellar production values and gorgeous animation, but they were largely constrained by business people's ideas of what they should be, what would make the most money. And looking at their openings, those constraints are readily apparent. In pretty much every one, you see strong characters either smiling confidently or resolute in the face of adversity, stepping into their robots with a sense of duty and purpose. And those robots are pretty much universally framed as cool and badass, even in the scenes of destruction shown in the Gundam Wing opening, for example. Soft lighting and strong posing makes the big robots look majestic.
Hell yeah, it does.
These OPs are designed to make you want to buy toys. Evangelion offers itself up as an antidote to this stale formula. In its first 25 seconds, it doesn't show any characters at all, and when it finally does, none of them strike you as typical mecha protagonists. Shinji's expressions are subdued and melancholic, and when he steps into the cockpit, he stares into the camera weary and dead-eyed. Where most anime at the time were eager to get their toys out in front of kids as soon as possible, we don't see any mecha in this mecha anime opening until the 55-second mark. And when we do, Unit 1 stands in stark contrast to the bold, powerful mechanical figures anime fans at the time were used to. It's uncomfortably skinny, hunched over, and bathed in shadow. And when it moves, it twitches and writhes like an animal in pain. In a world where every new giant robot is cooler and more inspiring than the last, here we have one that's downright it's scary.
Yeah.
In shots almost too quick to comprehend, we see this
There's
thing
a lot
has
of quick
gnarled
shots in this
mechanical
opening,
teeth, angry,
with text popping
glowing
up all over the
eyes,
place.
blood dripping from its hands and soaking its feet. It looks like a monster.
Yeah.
If you're sick of cartoons about robots, or you like them but you're getting a bit tired of the same old, that's going to grab your attention.
It is.
It's easy to lose sight of after 2.5 decades of openings and shows inspired by it, but when it came out, Ava's opening was a huge departure from the norm. And that was
Look at how
kind
quick
of the
those
point,
cuts are.
to tell potential viewers in no uncertain terms that this is not the repetitive real robot war story that they're growing tired of, or their dad's Super Robot series. It's not some gussied up toy commercial, though it certainly moved a lot of toys.
Hell yeah, it
it's
does.
something new and different.
Everywhere you
and
go when it goes to
hopefully
conventions, there is
exciting.
Evangelion
Were it
stuff.
not able to leverage this striking imagery in combination with Hidetoshi Sato's peerless pop composition to land that message so effectively, I don't think Evangelion would have had quite the impact that it did. Not as quickly as it did, anyway. With a series this good, word of mouth almost certainly still would have spread around over time, and even had a strong marketing push behind it, but every pair of eyes drawn in by this opening was one more mouth to evangelize for it. And man, does this opening ever draw you in. But of course, there's more to it than that. A lot more. Just the first shot of this opening can be taken to have many different meanings. Ripples, specifically ripples spreading out from teardrops, are a visual motif we see repeated throughout the series. The tears themselves are an obvious sign of emotional vulnerability, while the ripple could be seen as an expansion of the AT field to protect against that vulnerability. In other words, this could represent the way that Shinji and others tend to push other people away when they're at their weakest.
Yeah.
The ripple in the opening could also be said to represent the explosion of the second or third impact. Which would make sense of what we see following it. The second impact does turn the seas red and usher in the descent of the angels, after all, or perhaps it represents both. Like many things in Ava, what actually causes the impacts is open to interpretation, but it does seem as though human connections made by piercing through the AT field are a key to triggering them. And, of course, the goal of the Human Instrumentality Project is ultimately to use the power of the third impact to tear down the AT fields entirely and connect everyone on Earth. The formation of a Sephirot, or Tree of Life, a diagram representing the interconnected aspects of God and Kabbalah, is also a necessary trigger for the third impact, so the fact that a Tree of Life diagram follows the angel as the star field changes from red to blue lends a lot of credence to the idea that this opening sequence is a symbolic representation of one of the impacts. And since this is not the same Sephiroth formed by the mass production Avas in End of Evangelion, that one shows up a bit later in the OP, I'm inclined to argue that this is the second impact, which would mean that the ripple coming off the title card at the 20-second mark represents the third impact.
Damn, there we go.
The entire opening, by proxy, might be a stylized representation of Shinji's self-reflection when all of the world's souls are being blended into human soup during instrumentality. That would be the same self-reflection that we see play out in the last two episodes, but I'm skipping ahead a bit. The last image we see in the starfield is a patch of light shining through water, which is Evangelion's shorthand for representing the human soul. Specifically, the soul with its ego broken down and its AT field destroyed. A constantly shifting mass of energy that has no defined shape because without an other to contrast itself against, it cannot form a clear self-image. This is the state in which Shinji's mother exists within Unit 1, and the state that all souls coalesce into during the third impact. From here, the drums kick up and the title card arrives in a flash of light. Outside of the ripple, I think that this is mostly just an example of fancy motion graphics, but it still must be said that this is some damn fine graphic design and animation. Few anime logos are more instantly recognizable.
That is just like BAM. That's what it is. You know what it is.
We fade into an image of Shinji superimposed against the calm sky. His own silhouette appears beside him, but he turns away from it, refusing to accept a self that deep down he hates. This self-image disappears, only to be replaced with the silhouettes of Rei and Asuka,
the
floating
waifu
by
wars
in
begin.
opposite directions. When the two have passed, Shinji gives a weak smile. These actions are paralleled in the lyrics, which translate roughly to, "A blue wind is now knocking at the door of your heart, and yet you are merely gazing at me and smiling,"
so that
which
goes.
I believe explains what's being depicted here. This shot shows Shinji's standard response to the possibility of connecting with others, specifically as he grows closer to Rei and Asuka. Though he might smile, it's faint and non-committal. This is a facade of emotion, barely hiding the fact that his heart is still closed off. He's merely going with the flow to avoid causing problems and getting hurt. It's a far cry from the joyous smile that we see him flash at the end of the OP. The next shot of Misato draws similar meaning from its accompanying lyrics. Something gently touching. You're so intent on seeking it out that you can't even see your fate yet with such innocent eyes.
She drags him on the
These
quest.
lyrics speak to the search for love, specifically motherly love, that drives many of the characters in the series. And Misato represents a deeply flawed expression of that love. Though she closes off her own heart almost as much as Shinji does, she tries to at least act in a motherly fashion toward him and the other two Eva pilots. And these shots can be taken to represent her care for the kids, as well as the guilt that she feels in using them. But of course, again, that's only one layer of meaning. The appearance of the Sephiroth, specifically the same one formed by the mass production Evas in End of Evangelion, suggests a connection to the third impact here. And there are further parallels. The pose that Misato takes on as she looks toward the sky is very reminiscent of the giant Rei / Lilith from the end of the movie, and when she's hunched over hugging her knees, she looks a lot like Shinji. And this is the pose that Shinji assumes for the majority of End of Evangelion. So the fate of these characters is readily apparent in this shot, even though we can't see it yet with our own innocent eyes. Though she doesn't actually take on this role in the movie, I think it's appropriate for Misato to be the one foreshadowing these events, as instrumentality is framed in a sense as a return for humanity to the safety of our mother's embrace. And having her reflect different aspects of Shinji and Rei in her actions suggests that she has some influence on them as their de facto guardian. In the final seconds of the shot, Misato fades away to be replaced by Shinji in an image of Rei standing fearfully behind the window, hesitant to touch it. Again, on a surface level, this can be seen as depicting Rei's cold, closed-off demeanor and aversion to human contact.
She's not sure whether to
Looking at the cross-shaped cutout of the window, though, we can also see hints at her true identity, Lilith, the god that birthed humanity. This bit of foreshadowing is compounded as the screen is consumed by a close-up on Rei's right eye. The same eye that Unit 1 ultimately breaks out of in the movie when Shinji rejects instrumentality and reclaims his individual identity.
So cool.
This close-up also brings to mind other events of the third impact, specifically when every human on Earth is approached by a projection of Rei, who takes on the form of the person they love most in order to break through their AT fields and absorb their souls. We've already analyzed a lot in the first 50 seconds of this OP, but don't worry, the rest is a bit more straightforward. We transition into the action bit with a brief Eva boot sequence as seen in the show. And following this, we see Shinji sitting robotically in the cockpit with Unit 1 umbilical cable attached to its back, rising slowly into the frame as it activates. The faces of Gendo, Misato, Ritsuko, and Rei, the foremost prominent parental figures in Shinji's life, flash by, and Unit 1 has a downright violent reaction to their appearance, writhing in pain for a moment before pulling back into an ominous shadow and spreading wings from its back. The umbilical cable now conspicuously missing as the unit operates under its own power. In this symbolic transition to adulthood, Shinji finds the power to drive forward toward his own chosen future, represented by wings that he didn't know he had, which are alluded to in the lyrics of the theme song. To a new viewer, this shot of Unit 1 suggests a connection between Evas and angels, hinting that these not-quite robots may be more dangerous and sinister than they first appeared. Meanwhile, to someone who's watched the entire series, it's impossible not to draw a comparison between this shot and the image of Unit 1 at the height of its power in the movie, right before the third impact. Both interpretations also make sense of the montage we're about to see, which starts off with the aforementioned scary shots of the mecha soaked in blood. In addition to saying that this show's not like those other mecha anime, these shots also allude to Shinji's unfortunate tendency to lash out and hurt others. From here, fast action shots of Unit 1 and occasionally the other Evas are used to punctuate a blitz of visual information containing many significant plot elements and some frames lifted directly from the show. It might help to explain to English viewers that this white page is the cover of a report for the Human Instrumentality Project, but other than that, for the most part, the meaning of these shots is self-evident to anyone who's seen the series, so I'm going to focus on the meaning of the connections between them instead. Outside of its story context, it's worth noting that this montage is an homage to the opening of Jerry Anderson's UFO, a campy sci-fi series from the 1970s.
Oh wow, yeah, look how quick it's cutting between
agency fighting to fend off an alien invasion. Not only does Evangelion obviously borrow a bit from UFO's premise,
It
the character
does.
designs of Gendo and Fuyutsuki were directly modeled after UFO's commander Ed Stalker
Oh.
and Colonel Alec Freeman.
That's cool.
Fun fact. Taken as a whole, I believe that these shots represent Shinji's rapid-fire reflection on the events of the series at the moment of instrumentality, as the editing style of this montage is very similar to the flashing images we see inside Shinji's silhouette during episode 26. From Unit 1 spinning around and activating, the first chunk of the montage shows us a smattering of angels, marked with a title card at the end that says Angels, but you will note that, aside from Sachiel's face in the first frame, none of the things that we see in this sequence are obviously angels. Unit 1 rising out of the flames, a glowing core that could either belong to an Eva or an angel, and most tellingly, a single frame of Kaworu followed by a brief shot of Rei in front of the moon. The meaning of this is pretty clear. Kaworu and Rei are clones. Sort of, it's complicated, of Adam, the first angel, and Lilith, the second. The moon behind Rei further hints at this connection, as it was created when Lilith's container, the Black Moon, crashed into the Earth millions of years ago, forming the geofront, and began seeding the planet with life.
Well, I'll try explaining all that stuff to people who haven't seen Evangelion.
Tokyo 3, and the staff at NERV who aid in the fight against the angels. After a cut to the logo of Seele, the secret organization behind NERV, we see NERV's commander and Seele member Gendo Ikari, and the montage transitions towards hints at the deeper conspiracy behind the scenes. The cut between Gendo and Keel, one smug, one pissed, creates a sense of animosity between the two of them.
Yeah, you can tell
this
there's like
subtle
some
smile at the end implies that Gendo has his own plans for Adam and the
own
instrumentality
agenda.
project. Those plans, of course, involve the Evas, which we see next, followed by their pilots and Shinji's other friends. Because Shinji doesn't really want to think about these human connections that he has, this montage is cut short by an explosion of cool, distracting action, which in turn is cut short by that one thing that always brings Shinji down, his dad.
Yep.
In his third appearance in the opening, Gendo is looking down coldly at Shinji and us, with his expression harshened and obscured by his sunglasses. I might be reading too much into this, but I think there's a bit of sadness in his face as well, as what we see next is his last memory of Shinji, crying as he leaves him. Tragically, Gendo has a lot in common with his son. He hurts everyone close to him, and this makes him push the people he cares about,
away.
especially Shinji, away. On the other side of this image of young Shinji, we see a gentle image of his surrogate mom, Misato, followed by the cross that she carries as a memento of her own father. This connects to the second impact, which stole her father away from her. Rei was born out of similar experiments to the one that caused the second impact, specifically the failure of Gendo and Kozo to recover Yui Ikari's soul from inside Unit 1. The cut from the sketch of Yui to the exposed, fleshy head of Unit 1 with the position of their eyes overlapping makes this connection more explicit. And the cut from there to Ritsuko, who is currently banging Shinji's dad, and Misato, who is making an effort to actually raise the boy, completes the lineup of his surrogate mother figures. The last thing that we see at the end of the montage is a faded memory of Misato, Ritsuko, and Kaji, calling back to Misato's youth and reminding us that she's not really ready for the role that she's been thrust into in the series. Then, at last, we come back to Unit 1. Aside from that single frame of him crying as a child in Gendo's memory, this is the first time that we've seen Shinji since he entered the Eva, and that's not a coincidence. Shinji uses Unit 1 to supplant his own identity and the self-image that he hates for the bulk of the series, creating a new false self in this cool giant robot that is useful to others and powerful and not just a whiny little coma fapper. If you view the show as a critique of the otaku mindset, this mirrors the way that some nerds build their identities around brands, stories, and images, maybe giant robot-shaped images, that they happen to like, as a way of avoiding acknowledging parts of themselves that they don't. Evangelion was a work of self-reflection for its otaku director, Hideaki Anno, and so it's fitting that his own director's credit, the mark of his identity within this production, ends up being consumed by the image of the Eva in the transition to this final sequence, creating an explicit parallel to his own relationship with mecha anime, specifically the one that he was making at the time, and drawing a direct connection between him and Shinji. Shinji's body coming out of the Eva and growing to encompass it symbolizes his recognition and acceptance of his true self at the very end of the series. And as he falls away from the Eva, he separates his identity from it entirely. The pose that the Eva takes in this shot mirrors the earlier shot with the wings, but those have been removed as Shinji has taken the power to move forward in life into himself. To reflect the fact that Shinji is now comfortable being himself, the last shots of this opening show him alone in all of his different states of being, good and bad. A quiet boy determined to help others, a whiny brat shrieking about things he doesn't like, a wimp cowering and shielding his eyes from what he fears, and lastly, a kid, smiling on what looks like
because you can't forget how young he is when he's going through all this, like, Jesus Christ. This is what Shinji becomes
after his breakthrough in episode 26. Still flawed, still weak, but now capable of loving himself anyway. And by proxy, capable of loving others. The final shot on the show's sponsor card shows a fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls, real-world religious artifacts that, in the show's universe, prophesize the coming of the angels.
Yeah.
The text shown here doesn't, to my knowledge, have any translated meaning, though the characters here do look to be a combination of Japanese kanji and the occult alphabets published by 16th century theologian Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, specifically the angelic script, which he invented to communicate with angels. While the actual meaning of this script isn't clear, it's certainly fitting to cap off an opening so packed with foreshadowing with a page ripped from a literal prophecy. And there, more or less, you have it. Or maybe you don't. After all, this is just my interpretation of the opening based on my understanding of Evangelion, which is itself very open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Cruel Angel's Thesis has captured the imaginations of the anime community for so many years, not just through the strength of its animation and music, but through the way that it presents an intriguing puzzle for viewers to piece together as they watch it. And like the show itself, this opening endures because it gives those who are so inclined so much to dig into.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about.
Now, before you go drop your own interpretations of the OP, I hope you've enjoyed hearing my thoughts on it. If you did, or if you've got your own thoughts about the meaning of this landmark OP, let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, consider hitting the subscribe button and ringing the notification bell to see more overly serious analytical pieces about anime and sometimes games and movies delivered straight from my mother's basement every week. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out.
Cool, I like that. That was cool. There's just so much going on in that OP, like so many quick cuts and so many shots, and like you said though, as is with most of the anime, it's open to interpretation. So you know, there's going to be people arguing and disagreeing with stuff, but everyone has their own opinion on what's going on in that OP. And if you've not seen Evangelion, check it out. It's on Netflix now, but you already knew that because everyone's talking about it. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys, yes, all you guys, next time. Bye.